My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I believed my family was the one place where I would always belong. I was wrong. The day my mother called me useless, I stood in our kitchen holding a birthday cake I had spent 3 hours making for her. She looked at the cake, then at me, and sighed. "You're almost 30, Emily. When are you going to become useful to this family?" I froze. Then she said something I would never forget. "If you walked out that door right now, nobody would even notice." So I put the cake down, I picked up my purse, and I walked out. What my mother didn't know was that I had already discovered the secret she had been hiding from me for years. And when the truth finally came out, she was the one begging me to come back. For as long as I could remember, my older sister Samantha was the favorite. She was confident, beautiful, successful, and always knew exactly what to say. My mother praised everything she did. When Samantha got a new job, Mom threw a celebration. When Samantha bought her first car, Mom called all our relatives to tell them. When Samantha got married, Mom spent months planning the wedding. I never expected the same treatment. I was quieter. I worked as a graphic designer and lived in a small apartment across town. I wasn't rich, but I paid my bills, supported myself, and tried to help my family whenever I could. Every month, I sent money to my parents whenever they needed help. When Dad's car broke down, I helped pay for the repair. When Mom needed surgery, I stayed beside her in the hospital for 3 nights. But somehow, none of that counted. Samantha only had to call Mom and say, "I miss you." And suddenly, she was the perfect daughter. I could spend an entire weekend helping my parents, and Mom would still ask why I couldn't be more like Samantha. I tried not to let it hurt, until the night of Mom's birthday. I arrived at their house carrying her favorite chocolate cake. I had also bought her a necklace. I thought maybe this year would be different. Instead, I found Samantha sitting at the kitchen table. Mom was looking at some papers. "What's going on?" I asked. Samantha smiled. "Mom and Dad are making some changes to the house." I looked at Mom. "What kind of changes?" Mom pushed the papers toward me. "We're transferring the house to Samantha." I stared at the document. Their house had belonged to our family for more than 25 years. It wasn't just a building. It was where I grew up, where Dad taught me to ride a bicycle, where Mom hugged me after my first heartbreak. And now they were giving it to Samantha. I swallowed my disappointment. "That's okay," I said quietly. Samantha smiled. "You understand, right?" Before I could answer, Mom looked at me. "You don't need this house, Emily. You have your little apartment." I nodded. Then Mom added, "Besides, Samantha is the responsible one." Something inside me cracked. I looked at the cake sitting beside me. "Happy birthday, Mom." She barely glanced at it. Then came the words that changed everything. "You know, Emily, sometimes I wonder what you've actually accomplished." I stared at her. "What?" "You're almost 30, you don't have a husband, you don't have children, you don't own a house. And you're still doing little design jobs." Samantha laughed softly. Mom continued, "You need to grow up, you're basically useless." I felt my eyes fill with tears, but I refused to cry in front of them. I picked up my purse. Mom looked surprised. "Where are you going?" "Home. Don't be dramatic." I turned toward the door. Then Mom said, "If you walk out now, don't expect us to chase after you." I stopped. I looked back at her. "You won't have to." And I left. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and finally allowed myself to cry. But after an hour, something changed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of begging for approval. Tired of proving I was worthy. Tired of being the daughter who was only remembered when someone needed help. The next morning, I made a decision. I stopped sending money to my parents. I stopped answering every phone call, and I stopped trying to earn my mother's love. For the first time in years, I focused completely on myself. I started taking bigger design projects. Within 3 months, my freelance business grew. I hired an assistant. 6 months later, I moved into a beautiful new apartment. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I received an email from an attorney. The subject line said, "Important family property matter." I almost ignored it, but the attorney's name looked familiar. It was the lawyer who had handled my grandfather's estate years earlier. I called him. "Why are you contacting me?" He sounded surprised. "Emily, your grandfather left instructions concerning the family property." "What property?" There was a pause. "The house your parents live in." My heart started beating faster. He explained that before my grandfather died, he had placed the house into a family trust. According to the original agreement, the house was supposed to remain equally available to both grandchildren, Samantha and me. But there was more. My grandfather had also left a separate investment account. Half was supposed to go to Samantha. The other half was mine. I had never received a single dollar. I asked the attorney how much the account was worth. His answer left me speechless. $180,000. I sat there staring at the wall. For years, my parents had told me I was struggling because I wasn't responsible enough. But they had been holding my inheritance. And suddenly, everything made sense. The pressure to stay quiet, the constant comparisons, the way Mom always told me not to ask questions about Grandpa's estate. They knew. I met with the attorney the following week. He showed me the documents. My signature wasn't required because I had never been told about the account. Then he showed me something else, a letter written by my grandfather. It said, "Emily has always been the one who gives without asking for anything in return. Make sure she receives what I intended for her." I couldn't stop the tears. My grandfather had seen me, even when my own mother hadn't. I decided not to confront my parents immediately. Instead, I waited. 2 weeks later, the attorney contacted them officially. That was when everything exploded. Mom called me 23 times in one afternoon. I didn't answer. Then Samantha called. Finally, I picked up. "Emily, we need to talk." "No, we don't. You don't understand what happened." "I understand perfectly." Mom suddenly came onto the call. "Emily, please." I had never heard that word from her before. "Please," she began crying. "Come home." I stayed silent. "We made mistakes," she said, "but we're still your family." I closed my eyes. "You told me I was useless." I was angry. "You told me nobody would notice if I left." I didn't mean it. "You took my inheritance." There was silence. Then Mom whispered, "We were going to give it back." "When?" Another silence. I laughed bitterly. "After I found out?" Mom started crying harder. "Emily, please come home. We can fix this." I finally understood. She wasn't calling because she missed me. She was calling because she was afraid of losing control. A few days later, I agreed to meet them. I walked into my childhood home and saw the same kitchen where Mom had called me useless. Samantha was there. Dad was sitting quietly at the table. Mom stood up immediately. She looked different, smaller, tired. She walked toward me. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. She continued. "I treated Samantha differently. I shouldn't have. And what we did with your inheritance was wrong." Dad looked at me. "We're going to return every dollar." I nodded. "I expect you to." Mom reached for my hand. I gently pulled away. She looked hurt. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I don't need your approval anymore." Mom started crying. "I just want my daughter back." I looked around the house one last time. "I was always your daughter, Mom. You were the one who made me feel like I wasn't." Nobody spoke. Then I walked toward the door. This time, nobody told me not to leave. 6 months later, my inheritance was finally transferred into my account. I used part of it to expand my business and donated a portion to a women's shelter. I never moved back home. I never stopped loving my family, but I stopped allowing them to hurt me. Mom eventually began therapy. Samantha apologized. Dad admitted he had stayed silent for too long. Our relationship slowly changed. It wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to become someone my family would finally approve of. I was simply becoming myself. And I learned something I wish I'd understood years earlier. Being rejected by people you love doesn't mean you're worthless. Sometimes, walking away isn't giving up on your family. Sometimes, it's the first time you choose yourself. My mother once told me nobody would notice if I walked out that door. She was wrong. I noticed, and that was finally enough.